Saw a story this week. A man walked into his home and all of his lamps were missing. He was delighted. No? Why is an island like the letter T? It's in the middle of water. No? Oh, yeah. Some of you will get that in a minute. Let me just read to you from Matthew 11, because that's where we are. I'm going to read to you verse 7. As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds concerning John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind, and this is an easy part of this passage to blow over. What then did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Behold, those who wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. And what Jesus is talking about is how we're not supposed to come to church just to be reaffirmed. We're not supposed to come here on Sunday mornings to make us feel good about ourselves. We're not supposed to come here to get a little pat on the behind and go home and feel encouraged all the time. That's not what this is all about. If every time you come to church, your whole idea is just to be here for the sole purpose of hanging out with your friends and to be encouraged and to get something great, then you're missing it. And there's something more that you're going to need to hear in your life, and it's not about what you want to hear. It's about what you need to hear. And the thing is that you and I would rather walk through this world going toward the things that we want to hear, the things that make us feel better, than we do going toward the things that are hard for us. And there's so many times when there's people who we have given authority in our lives to speak truth, who they will come to us and they'll tell us, hey man, you need to change what you're doing right now. You're going to mess yourself up. I've got a friend right now, and people have been telling him for years, man, look, you gotta lay down your alcohol, or you're gonna kill yourself. You're gonna lose your entire family. And he just pushes back. Sometimes we need to hear the difficult things. Most of us, we need that prophetic voice in our life that is allowed to speak into the darkness, into the hard part, that is allowed to lead us forward, that is allowed to say, hey man, you're not doing all right. And Jesus was saying, did you go out there thinking you're going to hear an easy message? Did you go out there to John thinking that you were going to hear something easy that was just going to make you feel good? No. You went out there to hear a prophet. You went out there to hear from the Lord. And the question is, who is it that just wants to hear what they want and not what they need to hear? Like when it comes to Jesus, what do you call people when all they want to do is hear what they want but not what they need? You call those people fans. Like they show up to a game and they wear the hat for a game day, maybe for a 3-hour period if you're lucky. They'll be all in, right? We have lots of people like that at churches all across this country. Every Sunday they come together, we sing songs, we have a big foam finger that we hold up that says Jesus is number one, and we're all into it. But when we leave this room and we go back to the world, we don't think about him at all. Like if the last time that you thought about Jesus and what he had to do in your life was the last time you were here last week, or maybe it was the week before, then there's a good chance that you're living as a fan of Jesus and not having an actual relationship with him. Think about this. I try not to leave my family very often, but once a summer now, we go to Haiti. And let's just think that it's the day that I leave on Sunday, and now we're going to come back on Sunday. But let's just think that I go to Haiti and I leave Sunday, and the whole time I'm there, I never call my wife. I show back up on Sunday and I walk in and the house is just destroyed. I've not talked to her all week. I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, where have you been? Like, I didn't know what was going on. Why haven't you talked to me? What's going on here? And I was like, oh, no, it's okay. I talked to you last week. We're good, right? And that's not a relationship. That's not how it's supposed to be. But when it comes to Jesus, somehow that's how we think we're supposed to relate. Once a week, maybe, if we're lucky. And Jesus says, what I want from you is sometimes you need a prophet to come in and break your heart. You need a prophet to come in and speak truth to you that is going to mess you up. And Jesus is talking to the crowd and he's saying, look, what did you go out there for? Like, is the thing that drew you out there, this idea that you were going to get this soft message from a guy in soft clothing? Of course not. And Jesus is saying, look, I'll never be the guy that allows you just to go back into the darkness and say, man, it's all good, baby. It's good. Don't worry about it. He's never going to be that guy. And Jesus says, I'm the guy that is constantly in your face, trying to tell you to change. I'm the one that is constantly there knocking at the door, trying to get you to change something about you. And I think back to the story in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and they say Aslan is coming, right? And the question they ask is he safe? And they say, no, but he's good. And the same is so true about Jesus. Like, Jesus isn't safe. The things that Jesus will call you to, the things that he's asking you to do in this life, it's not safe. But he's good. And he says, what did you go out in the wilderness to hear? Something soft? These people were living safe lives, and John the Baptist was this upside down, and he was unstable. And listen, that's how most followers of Jesus are. They live this upside down, backwards life that the world looks at, and they say, you're crazy. We do crazy things in the name of faith in Jesus, and we don't do it the same way that everyone else does. Or we shouldn't. And the truth is that Christianity is tough. I think now more than ever we live in an era where people want truth. Teenagers, young people, they want truth. And for so long we've been giving them these soft things to hold on to. We've been giving them soft truths, trying to walk around what's really going on, trying to make it easier for them to digest, but that's not what they want. If all Daniel did was give all your teenagers soft truths, how would that benefit them? The world that they are living in is tough. I read an article a month or two ago that said something like 75% of 8th graders and higher have seen nude pictures of people they go to school with. Listen, teenagers will hate me for this, but if you allow your teenager to take their cell phone or their computer into their room at night alone, you're crazy. It is not the same world that you lived in. And you say, well, they might hate me. Who cares? It is not your job to be their friend. It is your job to keep them safe. He said, what did you go out in the wilderness to see? Some soft guy? It's not about doing what you want and being affirmed. It's about the difficult task of being a disciple in the world that we're living in. You know how many times the word Christian is used in the New Testament? 3. You know how many times the word disciple is used in the New Testament? 165. You know how many times the word church is used in the New Testament? Just 3, all in the Gospel of Matthew, but 140 times the word kingdom is used. And somewhere the word church and Christianity, we've taken meaning out of these words. But Jesus said, I want you to build a kingdom. He said, I want you to build a kingdom here on this earth. And I don't know if you know anything about history, but that's kind of brutal sometimes. It's not easy. You're fighting against other powers. You have to claim what's yours. He says, I want you to build a kingdom. And it's going to be tough because in the middle of battle, people die. You have to go places that people don't want to go. And sometimes I think we're not willing to go into the wilderness. We're not willing to go to the places that we need to go to say, Jesus, wherever you're calling me to, when you call me to something different, I'm willing to go. And the question might be, well, why would I want a Christianity that is hard? Why would I want a Christianity that is difficult? It's because we're talking about true greatness. Verse 11 of chapter 11 says this, truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has arisen no greater than John the Baptist. Yet the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. He's saying, look, everybody since Adam, there is no one greater. Since the beginning of time, there has been no one greater. And we have this idea that greatness is a bad thing. And he's saying, look, there's no one that's been greater than John the Baptist. And in his economy, when everything gets flipped upside down, this sounds weird. And he's saying, look, John is the greatest person who has ever lived. And there's 2 reasons that is. And the first reason is this. That is exactly what God has said about John. I mean, the first reason that he's the greatest person that ever lived is because that's what God said about him. He said, you are the greatest human being, and so that's true. But what does that mean for us? What does it mean for us? It means that God declares that you and I, we are his beloved. He says that we have his righteousness on us. The Bible tells us that we take on his righteousness versus our sins, versus our circumstances. Whether we are sick, and that's when some people shift away. When once we get sick, we shift from this idea that we're a new creation to someone who has a sickness. He's saying, look, here's what matters. It's not what the world says about you. It's not what your circumstances show you, but it's about what I say you are. And he says, if you are in him, you are a new creation. No matter what the world says, you're great, you're beloved. And that needs to be what your identity is. You would say, well, why is he great? He's in prison. And Jesus said, because I said so. And in the world that we live in, people want to cast these identities on us. They want to tell us who we are, like these little stickers, and they want to stick them to you, and they want to give you titles, and they want to gossip about you. And what will happen is the more people talk about you and the more they say things about you, you'll start to wear that identity. You'll start to believe those things about yourself, about what the world says that you are. And he says, let all of that fall away. Truthfully, if you wear your circumstances as your identity, it will beat you down. You and I have to realize who God says you are. And the second reason that he says John is great is John lives this life that is obsessed with godliness. He lives a life that is obsessed with godliness. And godliness is about two different things. It's about what you're becoming and what you're ceasing to be. It's about the things that you do and the things that you don't do. And what you'll become is someone who goes into the wilderness, the more and more like him you are. You will become someone who follows him into the deepest and darkest places just because that's what he told you to do. It's not just about what you do, it's about what you don't do. And he took the Nazirite vow. He never touched a drop of alcohol. And you look at him and you can say, well, he was obviously never drunk. And this isn't about alcohol. I'm not going there today. But the question is does it have a hold on you? So there's this whole group of things that John did and a whole group of things that he didn't do. And John was very willing to stay away from worldly pleasures because he wanted to honor God. And Jesus says he's the greatest that ever lived. We think about his life and we think about our lives, and we can get so discouraged. Because in this world, there are so many things that come against us and hit us and try to take us out and take us off of what we're supposed to do. Circumstances build up. Our kids aren't behaving like we know they should. My job isn't going like I thought it would 10 years ago. I'm not in the place that I was. I'm sick. And we look at John and his goodliness and we think, how in the world? I'm not good enough. I'm not like him. But John was this guy that was dreaded up in the middle of the wilderness just trying to do what God wanted him to do. And God used him to do something great. Because none of us in this room are perfect. Like, I'm a disaster. I mess up parenting so often. I do things that I know are going to make my kids need therapy for at least 2 years later in life. And I mean, it's just stuff that I was trying to keep myself from doing. And the therapy that I needed, I do the opposite. And then I realized that they're probably going to need therapy for me doing the opposite, but that's beside the point. But I mess up. But maybe, just maybe, God can use me to do something right in the world. Maybe Jesus could use somebody like me. Verse 12 says this. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence. and the violent take it by force. I didn't read the right thing, did I? The one who is least, the one who find themselves going to that sin over and over again, the one who is least of this. As some of you, I've heard you, and it's so amazing to me. I have heard so many people talk about prayer, and they'll say, man, I am no good at prayer. There's some of you in this room that I say that, and you're like, that's me, man. I feel you. I get it. But all of you are pretty good at talking. And prayer is so simple. But you've gotten yourself this idea that it has to be something so much deeper than what it really is. It's just a conversation. And here's the reality. John was living in an era where he had to work out his own righteousness. John had to work out his own righteousness for the gospel. But you and I, we get the righteousness of Jesus. He was trying to figure it out all on his own. But you and I, we get Jesus as a righteousness accredited to us. And on the day of judgment, there's nothing that's unrighteous that can stand in front of God. And we can come before him and we can stand behind Jesus and his righteousness. If the worship team would come. When you and I believe in Jesus, when we hold on to him, he takes away our sin. And here's the thing, when you and I are without sin, all that does is make us neutral in his sight. That's why we also needed his righteousness. That's what Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians 5. He talks about how Jesus took our sin and he gave us his righteousness that we might become his righteousness. Not only sinless, but justified. See, John the Baptist had to do all this stuff for his own righteousness. But all of us in this room, we have Jesus. And no matter how big of a disaster your life may be, no matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how far away you feel, if you entrust your life to Jesus, it changes everything. Because you're sinless. And you're justified through him. Will you stand with me? It's amazing how Scripture kind of weaves these ideas in segments. And over the past few weeks, we've been talking about this a lot, about how Christianity is tough and it's going to take us actually doing something and not just hearing words. wants more for our lives. Than just an hour every Sunday. He wants a relationship with you like you desire with your spouse. For all of us, our sinful nature comes in when we start to lose focus on our first love. And Jesus becomes secondary. There's so many things in this world that you and I give our attention to that we spend so much time doing. In the end, it won't matter for much. Make today the day that you turn all of your heart and all of your affection back to Jesus. Like the first day that you turned your life over to Him. It will make you a better spouse. It will make you a better parent. It will make you a better co-worker. When your identity is in Him. Some of you might be here this morning and you may have never allowed Jesus to have total control of your life. Here in a minute they're going to play and we're going to begin to sing. I want to give you the opportunity to come and profess Him as your personal Lord and Savior. For all of us, today is the day that we start to turn our hearts and our affections back to Him. Pray with me. Father, we thank you. Father, I thank you that you love us. Father, I thank you that you stand at the door and you knock and you are just calling out to us, hoping that we turn our gaze and our affection to you. Jesus, I'm so undeserving. Father, be with us. Father, I pray for those of us here this morning that our passion once burned so deep and so bright for you that it's now been just diminished. Father, I pray that this would be the day that you rekindle that flame in our spirit, that we would turn our hearts back to you and follow you passionately. Anywhere you call us to go. Jesus, we love you. We thank you. It's in your mighty name we pray.